Essentially, with Tenma locked in prison and him going nowhere, it really feels like the story's picking up. Welcome back to Monster, everybody. 3 more books to go. This is volume 7. 7 of 9 to be specific, if I can even say that without getting sued by Star Trek. If this was a movie, we'd be in the 3rd act right now. Although it doesn't really feel like that's how this is structured. I don't think this is necessarily intended to be a 3-act structure, but I could be wrong. But nevertheless, we are moving forward in the story, and with Tenma going to prison and everybody working in the background to try and get him out of prison, suddenly he's put in the same building as an escape artist. So probably we won't need that army of people that are out there rallying and picketing for him to get out, because he'll probably just piggyback off the escape artist anyway. I mean, that's how I would read into it, and did. But we're not there yet. Because first he needs to pass the BKA man in the hallway, and the BKA man stops him and says some really cryptic ass shit to him, like the hardest people to deal with are the ones who don't say anything. And you're just like, are you serious right now? Because we then immediately transition into an interrogation scene where Tenma literally sits there and says nothing, and we're officially at a point in the story where the BKA man is helping Tenma by telling him what to do before he gets to the interrogation room. I would not have predicted that. In no scenario would I have predicted that the BKA man would be feeding tips and information and helping Tenma. Anyway, we get an attorney whose father was falsely convicted of a crime, and now he's devoted his entire life to getting falsely convicted people off and out of prison. You know, fighting for the little man. And Ava's back in town, and boy, is it good to see her. I sure did miss that woman. Okay, now the story's going to go round and round for a few chapters, and actually, to be honest, it's not looking too bad for Tenma's case with the attorneys and getting him leverage to get out of prison. And to be fair, they could pretty much get him out right now scot-free if they'll just get Ava to testify on his behalf. Really? Anyway, now the attorney's partner is going to show up at the prison to talk to Tenma, and guess who it is? Roberto! And I hate to say I told you so, but after pulling the trigger and after killing Roberto, or as far as we know he killed Roberto, I have a feeling that son of a bitch will be back. But anyway, I told you so. And he's going to tell Tenma that he's going to have to kill Ava to keep her from testifying. And Tenma basically says if she testifies at all, it's going to be against me. See? Tenma knows what's up. But then he immediately starts planning his escape so that he can run out and protect Ava. Like, really, Tenma? I mean, I know you're like the symbol of completely unwavering morality and always do the right thing, and that is the core of your entire personality. But maybe you don't break out of prison and put a bigger target on your back than there already is for the sake of somebody who... I mean, I'm not saying that Ava deserves to die. I'm just saying that she is a genuinely terrible person. And, you know, maybe think about yourself for a second. That's all. That's it. And your goals. You got goals. You have priorities, like Johan. Anyway, before I take myself into any kind of a hole here, I really do like that Tenma decides to break out of prison. First off, Johan and them would have never let her testify anyway, and Tenma would have had to find another way out of prison anyway. And secondly, it really does just ratchet up the tension in the manga when he escapes, because he always was wanted by the police, but before he was wanted on suspicion, and now he's wanted because he is an escaped criminal, and the level of exposure that he has had on the news and the media and all of that is just exponentially greater than it was before. So now he literally can just about go nowhere without everybody in the vicinity really being familiar with who he is, what his story is. It just takes all of the tension that was essentially there before, but just dials it up a notch, because now he's wanted for more things and he's had way more exposure to the public. So he is much less safe out in public. And then, of course, when they actually do try to perform the prison break, it goes terribly wrong. And the guy who's supposed to run out in the middle of the road and stop the bus gets hit by the bus. And now Tenma has to save him. And now we get back-to-back scenes with the attorney. One with the BKA man, where the BKA man tells him that he's aware of his father and tells him that his father was guilty and was never innocent at all. Then we get another scene with the attorney and Tenma, and the attorney tells Tenma that he's aware of his father's guilt, and he's been aware for basically forever because he was able to dig up the proof a long time ago, and he knew long before the BKA man ever told him. And he's essentially a big fat liar. His whole career's a lie. He gets criminals off for the sake of getting criminals off, and then does it under the pretense that they were innocent, essentially getting criminals off and then lying about it. And his whole career is a lie. He's a big fat liar. Liar. And I know at this point it's probably a big mistake to take anything this manga tells me at face value, but I really did think that the attorney and his whole story was legit. Essentially just because that's the kind of characters that Urasawa has essentially been setting up for us. Everybody kind of has, like, you know, this doctor or that lawyer or this person, and they have this story, and a lot of them are just kind of heartwarming or good or wholesome, you know. And essentially at this point he gives us this story which falls right in line with everything else that he's written and all of the other supporting characters that he's written for us into the story so far. And then he does this little rug pull. It's almost like he's subverting your expectations from his own setups that he's been feeding you this whole time, twisting it around just so you don't have any chance to feel settled or feel safe while you're reading. It's good, and for the mystery aspect and the tension and just the whole drama aspect of this manga, it's just a very good, clever writing decision, and it was quite satisfying to read. Although he does go back and it does end with him holding his baby and just hoping for pure innocence, which did feel good that that part of his character was actually truly genuine. Like, his dad was a criminal and he was aware of that. He is essentially a liar, but at the end of the day, he really does go to the hospital and hold his baby and just hope for something innocent to be born of the less than sincere people that he and his father have been. He does hope for a better future for his family. Anyway, snap back to Nina now, and she's going to go over to the Rose Manor, and she goes inside, and she goes up to that room, and she has a flash of a bunch of dead bodies, passes out, and wakes up in a puppeteer's house. And he's called the doctor for her, and then he comes in, and she's like, "Oh, how did your puppet show go?" And he's just like, "Oh, nobody turned out for it." And she's like, "Oh, really? But the puppets are so nice." No, the f*** they're not. There's something wrong with the puppets, Nina. There's something wrong with this dude, and there's something wrong with you if you think they're nice. Then she's just like, "Why were you at that house when you found me unconscious?" And he's like, "Oh, that's where I go to get ideas for my puppet show. By the way, you can stay here forever." I wouldn't be surprised if this guy was killing and eating people on the side. Oh, you mean he's not doing that? He just has an entire library of those f***ed up children's books? Oh, okay, that's normal. Meanwhile, Johan's gonna go over to the Rose house and he's gonna burn the whole fucking place down. Then, this is gonna lead the cops to find that the entire rose garden is full of skeletons. But first, we get a scene of Johan talking to the picture of his mother, telling her that now I understand everything. I understand where we come from, and I understand where we're going. Then Tenma visits General Wolf, and he says, "It's just a theory, but I think the kids were born in that place." Where, Wolf? You know you're allowed to finish a sentence. You know what? Maybe we are in the third act of this story because the mysteries just keep stacking on top of each other, making you just want more and more while the story seems like it's speeding up and the tension is constantly increasing. It really does. So maybe it really does feel like we're like very quickly approaching something here. So, you know what? Maybe I was wrong. Maybe we are in the third act here. Anyway, after all that, the book's going to wrap up with this small little section at the end. And it was quite small. It was only 2 chapters, but actually it was my favorite section of the entire book. It starts with a bodyguard in the back of a car, and he's bleeding out, remembering how he got there. My picture light died. I just now noticed that. Oh, and that makes me sad. Yeah, it's dead as fuck. Alright. It starts with a bodyguard in the back of a car, and he's bleeding out, remembering how he got there. And he was hired to protect Ava, of all people, and she dresses herself up and goes to parties and dresses him up to look like Tenma, even buys him the same tie and everything. And the whole time he just keeps saying, I don't like this job. All for it to just end with him in a car, bleeding out, looking at that tie, saying, if it weren't for this tie, I never would have seen those horrors. What horror? What happened? And what does the tie have to do with anything? Please tell me something. Give me an answer to anything at this point. Please and thank you. But anyway, in all seriousness, it really was my favorite section. I don't know really why. I think it was just the overall kind of feel that it had and the structure of it and the way the story was told. And I know he didn't get much time. He only had 2 chapters. But for some reason, I really liked the guy in those 2 chapters. Just his character in general. I really enjoyed him as a character. I hope we get to see more of him, but I don't know how much longer he'll be around. Also, side note, is it just me, or does he remind anybody else of Guy Pearce from the movie Memento? Anyway, as far as this manga is concerned, this was another good section of the story. I would say that the last book had a better character, essentially, considering that Grimmer is one of my favorite characters, like, of the entire manga. So having him in the last volume, like, he was a better character. But I think that the story in this section was more consistent throughout than it, say, was in the last one, or at least for me. And it definitely had a better ending to this section than the last one did. But overall, I think it's still pretty much just balancing out. I really feel like this is just such a strong 8 of a story. I think I gave the last one that, I think I gave the one before that an 8. It just really is consistently holding that same level of quality. And actually, that might be a point in its favor. It is, it's not necessarily like your 10 out of 10 style story, but it is a solid 8, which is a very good score. And it just won't let it go. It just constantly holds pace with itself and never really slips in quality. So, yeah. Kudos to you, Urasawa, for making a very nice, tense narrative that is constantly interlocking with itself and constantly just executes so damn well on it. 8. As always, everybody, the link for my Patreon's in the description below. The link for my Discord's in the description below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.